Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes piped in not long after the shootings in Kenosha and basically shot his mouth off about what he thinks was going on. And although he prefaces by saying he doesn't really have much information, that doesn't stop him. You're going to see right now in very glaring terms the kind of problems that Kyle is facing in terms of public perception based on misinformation, myths, and lies. Hello out there. I am trying to get through.
With his powerful brainwaves cradled in the warmth of reasoning, it's time for Johnnie Walker Dread to straighten you out on a thing or two. Emanating all the way from exciting Las Vegas, Oklahoma, it's the Johnnie Walker Dread Show.
Okay, Mandela, let's hear it. He's going to be coming to the table here with vast amounts of information, enough for him to actually make claims about the guilt and innocence of people. Let's see how he does.
Wisconsin Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes joins us now from Milwaukee. Lieutenant Governor, good morning. Thank you for being with us. I know you can't share specifics about the investigation into Jacob Blake's shooting, but what can you tell us about the actions that are being taken?
I know that you can't share specifics. Well, that's not going to stop him from just making grand conclusions.
What I can tell you is that there is a thorough investigation going on. Thank you for even bringing this up. Thank you for giving this moment space. It's so important for the American people to realize what's going on. And I can honestly say that I know about as much as you know. I saw the same video that you all saw. I saw the same video that many Americans saw, and that's a person being shot in the back 7 times. I know that our State Department of Justice is carrying out this investigation as well, and I've intentionally stayed as far away from it as possible to avoid any sort of conflict. We need this to be done as thoroughly as possible.
To avoid any sort of conflict, but that doesn't stop you from getting on a national television show and piping in who you think is guilty and who's not. That's not exactly staying above the fray. And while you admit that you know very little about what's going on, in fact, the only thing that you have said is the police officer shot him in the back 7 times. In other words, you saw a video clip and that's it.
When you saw that video, you wrote on Twitter, "You've got to be kidding me." I'm wondering, the officer who shot Jacob Blake, Rustin Chesky, was put on administrative leave. Do you believe he should be arrested?
Well, personally, I just don't see how anybody gets away with shooting somebody in the back.
In other words, yes, I do. He doesn't want the officer placed on administrative leave. What does he want the officer to do? Administrative leave is the protocol. That's what we do. I don't always agree with the way the protocol has been established, but that is the deal that the officer is working under.
7 times, and I feel like administrative leave is sort of it doesn't fit the actions that we saw. And too often we see these repeated cycles. We see the same scene over and over again where an unarmed person is shot and then they end up getting death duty.
It doesn't fit the actions that we saw. In other words, this officer is guilty. So why is he even being given administrative leave? Why isn't he just going to jail? Why do an investigation at all? Come on, we all saw it. We saw the officer shoot him back 7 times. He's obviously guilty. That's what he's saying.
And I don't think that's fair. Many people don't think that's fair as well. It just feels like, there's so much room for certain officers to make mistakes, but suspects cannot make the same mistakes without fear of losing their lives.
Can't make the same mistakes. Well, disobeying orders is not a mistake. It's a crime. Police officers gave him lawful orders. He refused. He assaulted police officers. That's a crime. It's not a mistake. A mistake is when you have a choice between 2 things and you think you make the right one, but you don't.
Many people, again, who we see are unarmed, and Jacob Blake is now paralyzed. He won't be able to walk again. And the officer has death duty. I don't think anybody thinks that that's fair right now, but we are.
So the guilt of the officer is so obvious that no reasonable person could possibly say that the officer isn't guilty. That's what he is saying.
We are waiting for this investigation to play out because it's important to find out all the facts. But we saw what we saw.
It's important to find out all of the facts, but we saw what we saw. Go ahead and pull those facts out of the investigation, but he's guilty. We saw it. So the investigation in his mind is a formality. We go ahead and we do it. We gather all the facts, and then let's convict him.
We just saw that Joe Biden was in Kenosha yesterday. President Trump was there a few days before. The governor asked both presidential candidates not to come for fear of inflaming things. Do you think in any way those visits were beneficial?
Okay, so we're going to find out now if politics might be running some of the stuff going on in these.
So I'll say that I joined the governor in admonishing the Trump visit.
Oh, yeah, that Trump visit was so bad.
Because Trump is a person who has yet to condemn the teenage shooter who was transported across state lines and killed 2 people on our city streets.
So he's got Kyle convicted too. No trial. He doesn't think that a trial is even necessary for these people. They're guilty. This is the lieutenant governor.
Donald Trump has done everything to create even more division, and he's virtually celebrated this person who has killed 2 people on our city streets and severely injured another.
I don't recall Trump ever celebrating him. If I recall, what Trump said was that it looked like it was self-defense to him. It looked like he was being attacked. And that's his opinion, based on what he saw. But he didn't say Kyle was innocent. He just said, it looks to me like it was self-defense.
That's not what we need at this moment. Kenosha is a city that's healing. Our state is a state that is grappling with some racial tension and racial injustice. And Kenosha is ground zero for that right now. And after, the protests, like you see so many people who are coming together, who are uniting, who are deciding that this is the time for the city to do better, for the state to do better.
So he thinks that this is all about the community getting together. Look how happy they are. They're getting together, bonding, forming friendships. Oh, those people who lost their businesses, their livelihoods, screw them. You don't even mention them. Never mind the people who have had their lives destroyed by these actions.
And Donald Trump's visit it was one that sought to divide the city and the state even more because he's not performing well in the polls. It's a state that he won 4 years ago. And the only way that he's able to win is when people were divided. So I am glad to see that while Donald Trump was there was a beautiful celebration of community. You had kids out, you had family members out, you had people just having a great time enjoying themselves and getting
great time enjoying themselves in front of burned out buildings, destroyed businesses. They're having a good time. That's what matters.
To know one another. And Joe Biden's trip was all about listening. It was different. He didn't make incendiary remarks before he showed up to Wisconsin. He said that as a presidential candidate, he wanted to demonstrate the type of leadership that he would provide to this nation. And that started by listening. And that's exactly what he did. He didn't come here to spout off and say things that would tear this community further apart.
I wanted to interject here for a moment. The idea somehow that Joseph Biden did not make any statements that were divisive is pure balderdash. In fact, Kyle is suing him because of the comments that he made that libeled him. In fact, his comments were extremely divisive. It's just ones that the Attorney General agrees with.
They know that this is not fair to communities that continue to be marginalized. And if we don't do something about it as leaders, as a community, as elected officials, as faith leaders, as business leaders, we're going to be far worse off than the worst examples of things. You look at this continued killing. Like after Jacob Blake was shot, we still lost 2 people on the street. 2 people lost their lives. Yes. And this is not any sort of way to carry on society.
Lieutenant Governor Mandela Barnes, thank you so much for being with us this morning.
Notice that he talks in terms of being a marginalized community. Jacob Blake had warrants out for his arrest, felony warrants, for the pretty bad things he did to other people. He assaulted a police officer. He tried to get into a car with a knife. And it looked to me like this was half a kidnapping. So who's marginalized? It sounds like Jacob Blake was inflicting a lot of marginalization there, and the police came in and tried to stop him. But in his mind, it's the police that are at fault. It's obvious that this dude thinks that officer is guilty and needs to go to jail. And a trial, well, that just kind of gets in the way. That's that formality thing that we do, like investigation. Yeah, we'll collect all the data and all that kind of stuff. But ultimately, that officer needs to go to jail. That's his view. Now, let's see what he has to say about Kyle.
Tonight, the Wisconsin lieutenant governor reacted to the charges and why Rittenhouse was even in Kenosha.
These armed men who have no connection to even the state. That guy's from my town. So think about how ridiculous that is. Who is he accountable to? Nobody.
Okay, so his father lives in Kenosha. He was staying with his friend in Kenosha. His best friend lives in Kenosha. He works in Kenosha. He lives about 15 miles from Kenosha. He's in Kenosha all the freaking time. But according to Mandela Barnes, he has no connection to the town. And he said, who's he accountable to? Nobody. Well, let's see, he's been arrested. He has to go to trial. He's facing long prison sentences if he is convicted. Isn't that how we do accountability here? But you see, that's not how he wants the accountability. He wants Kyle in prison. He doesn't care about this innocent until proven guilty crap. In his mind, Kyle has already been convicted.
And for him to even be able to shoot somebody and still walk away from the scene. I mean, you know, they talked about finding a knife inside of the car, not even on Jacob Blake's person. But
see how ridiculous he can get? Oh, they talk about finding a knife in Jacob Blake's car. Yeah, on the floorboard? Who carries a knife on a floorboard? I mean, I don't carry my knives on a floorboard. Kind of a silly place to put them, if you ask me. There's an obvious reason as to why the knife was found on the floorboard. Because Jacob Blake was carrying it. He admitted he was carrying it. It was on video. Now, I understand maybe at this time that wasn't well established. But within a few days after the event, he is already going on record of saying that Jacob Blake was not carrying the knife. That's what he said. And that the knife was only on the floorboard. So who needs an investigation? So you see the problem that Kyle is facing. The lieutenant governor has him all but convicted. This is the second in command of the executive branch. So this is a matter of perception. Even if Kyle is found not guilty, it's people like him that are just going to keep pushing Kyle is a murderous, white supremacist, domestic terrorist. What would have been the harm? And Mandela Barnes saying simply, hey, you know, I'd like to do an interview about this, but I don't really know anything more than you guys know. It would be irresponsible for me to open my mouth out about an investigation of which I don't really have any information yet that you don't have. You saw the same video that I saw, and that's all I've seen. And while it does look bad for the police officer, we have to do the investigation first. There are certain claims that are being made that may be true, and we need to do the investigation. As for the young kid, guess what? That just happened just a few days ago, guys. We need to investigate this thing first. I'm not sure what took place that night. I don't know about his connections to Kenosha or why he was there or how he got the rifle. That will all be investigated. I'm sorry. But I know that you want me to make stronger opinions, but it would be irresponsible of me to do so. Now, to me, that would be a better leader. And we need more people willing to do that. And if people had been more willing to do that, perhaps a large part of the country would have had a better idea of what's going on here. Like my video and subscribe to my channel.